The thing I love most about doll making is the sheer variety of media, crafts and techniques you can pack into each doll. If there's any sort of craft you've ever fancied having a go at, from millinery to carpentry, there's probably a way you can work it into an art doll. For this button-eyed Gothic mermaid, as well as sewing, drawing and needle felting, I had fun with beading, and I even got to play with a die cutter. If you just found me, by the way, welcome. My name's Jo. I'm a full-time artist and doll maker based on a narrowboat in Wales. I've already sewn all the pieces and stuffed the head, body and arms with polyester fibre. I'm going to do something a bit different with the tail, so I'll come back to that later. First, I need to bead joint the arms. It took me quite a long time to learn bead jointing. At the time, there wasn't very much in the way of doll making content on YouTube, so I learned from the Susanna Oroyan books and a lot of trial and error. I have another video on my channel where I go into a lot more detail about jointing techniques, so I'll put a link to that one somewhere. If you don't see a card at the top of the screen, it'll be in the description. The neck is going to be button jointed. I'd usually anchor that from a button on the upper back, but I don't want a visible button on this one, so I'm going to hide it down under the tail. The thread goes right up through the torso and up to the top of the head, where I'll anchor the joint with the second button. That one will be hidden under the hair. The tension of the thread between the two buttons holds the head in place securely, but it allows it to tilt from side to side. I'm using Gutterman top stitch thread for all the jointing and hand stitching. This is much thicker and stronger than ordinary sewing thread, and you can pull it quite tight without it snapping. Now the tail should just slip on over the hips, but first I want to give it a bit of weight. I'm not using anything too special for this. These are just some glass sea beads I had sitting in a drawer. You could use plastic beads, but I wanted something a bit heavier. I don't want to fill the tail up too much, as I want to allow for a bit of movement, so I'm taking my time with it and checking it as I go. This is quite a snug fit over that button. This fabric doesn't have much stretch, so it's a bit fiddly, but I should end up with a nice smooth seam without any puckering. There's still room there for it to be placed in sitting, so that should do it. I'm going to ladder stitch all the way around with some top stitch thread. If you're enjoying this video, by the way, please don't forget to hit the like button and let me know. You can also subscribe if you like, so you don't miss the next one. If you'd like to help me to keep making content, super thanks are always appreciated, and you can find links to some of my art dolls and the other things I make down below. I'm going to come back to the tail later. I've soaked some lace in some diluted PVA glue to stiffen it a bit for a tail fin, so while I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to attach the arms. I'm jointing the shoulders with a single thread running right through the body, then I can fasten it off with a couple of stitches just underneath one of the arms where it won't be too visible. As she's a mermaid, I'm not making any clothing for this doll, but I do want to cut out some trailing vines to decorate the torso, so it kind of looks like she's draped in seaweed. Before I do that though, I want to finish the tail. I could stitch the tail fin directly onto the end, but I wanted something a bit more decorative and a bit more flexible. So I've picked out some large metal beads to create a bead joint. I'm quite pleased with how the lace has turned out. The PVA has given it a bit more structure, so it should fan out nicely. I've stitched along the top with top stitch thread to gather it up. Now I just need to thread it through the beads and tie it off. I could have left it there for the mermaid tail, but I had some really cute beads I wanted to use. I was just going to add a few to the end, but I got a bit carried away. I'm just picking out beads that call to me and stitching them so they sit together in a cluster. There's no plan here, I'm just having fun with it. There are some faux pearls in there, some coloured glass and a couple of metal ones. They kind of look like jewelled barnacles. Now I want to make some leafy paper vines to drape around her shoulders, so I'm going to cut some out from mulberry paper using the die cutter. I don't have a fancy electronic die cutting machine, this is just a basic mechanical one from Hobbycraft. The cutting die goes face down on the right side of the paper, then you sandwich it between two soft plastic cutting plates and turn the handle to push it through the rollers. I'd give it at least 3 goes to make sure the paper's cut all the way through. I didn't line that up particularly well as I was too busy checking the camera angle, but there's plenty of room along the edges so it still fits through. The plates do get a bit marked over time, as you can see these are quite well used. It doesn't really affect how well they work though, you get a lot of uses out of them before you need replacements. You can find similar die cutting machines on Amazon. I mostly use the Sizzix cutting dies, which work well in most machines. I'll put some links in the description. If the paper gets stuck in the cutting die, there are usually some tiny pinholes in the back. Just gently push a pin through the holes and the paper should just pop out. I'm being very careful not to tear this. This paper has a lovely natural texture and the colours are really vibrant. I'm going to make a couple more of these in purple and blue. This die embosses some tiny details on the leaves, which looks pretty cool. Be warned though, once you start buying cutting dies, it's addictive. You'll want them all. I'll probably need to trim the larger leaves off these, then I'll stick them in place with a bit of tacky glue. I'm using Aleene's acid-free tacky glue for this, as it's a nice thick strong glue, it's clear and it doesn't damage the fabric or go yellow over time. It does dry with a bit of a glossy finish though, and being my usual messy self, I've got a couple of splodges on the leaves, so I'm going to go over the vines with a clear sealer. I think I actually prefer the gloss finish anyway, and it protects the paper from fading over time. I've shaded around the eyes with Chromaflow pencils and given them a couple of coats of fixative spray, and I found some lovely embossed metal buttons for the eyes. I'm continuing the creeping seaweedy vine theme with the Derwent Line Maker pens to frame the face with curling tendrils and tiny narrow leaves. The ink is waterproof and light fast once it's dry, so I don't need to seal that with anything. That should last a lifetime. I'm blending a couple of different super chunky acrylic yarns for the hair. One's deep blue and the other one's a dark green mix with streaks of blue and gold. I think both of these are from the Signet Seriously Chunky ranges, though they do change their colour palettes quite often, so I'm not sure if these are still available. I'm needle felting the hair with the Clover pen style tool and 38 gauge needles. Then it'll just need unravelling and brushing out. I've named this little one Morella Whiptail. If you'd like to see how I made another mermaid doll with a button jointed tail, there's a video right here you can watch now, and I'll see you next time. Bye!